Get your shit out of my boardroom, Evelyn! You're fucking done! Chairman Franklin Sterling didn't just place the corrugated cardboard box on the table. He hurled it. It landed with a violent thud that shuddered through the polished mahogany, a brutal punctuation mark on a career he was determined to end. The dozen bespoke coffee cups belonging to the all-white, all-male board of directors rattled in their saucers. A few drops of artisanal brew splashed onto the glossy surface. Not one of them flinched. Instead, they leaned back in their high-backed leather chairs, faces split with the kind of predatory grins you see on sharks right before they feed. This was their show, a carefully choreographed corporate execution, and they were savoring every goddamn second. Inside the box, a life's work lay in ruins. Her Columbia MBA, the parchment slightly creased at the corner. Framed pictures of her family, now shoved face down in a gesture of profound disrespect. Her Financier of the Year award from last quarter, its heavy crystal base now wrapped in coarse industrial toilet paper, as if it were a piece of common trash. The message wasn't subtle. It was a fucking sledgehammer. You were never one of us. You never belonged here. Security will see you out, Sterling sneered, his voice a venomous cocktail of contempt and triumph. Make sure the bitch doesn't pocket any company silver on her way to the curb. The room erupted in guttural laughter. Henry Vance, the COO, a man whose ass Evelyn had personally saved during the Q2 liquidity crisis, actually slapped the table in his glee. Maybe now we can get back to our core values, he chortled. Someone who understands the culture of this institution. Dr. Evelyn Reed, Columbia MBA, 24 months as Chief Investment Officer, a staggering 31% increase in portfolio value under her stewardship, sat paralyzed. Not by fear, but by a cold, clarifying rage. Across the city, 200 employees of Sterling and Vance Financial were watching this public crucifixion live on a company-wide Slack channel. The humiliation wasn't a byproduct. It was the entire point. It was a calculated, brutal, and widely broadcast message. Have you ever been thrown out of a house you built with your bare hands? Have you ever had your achievement systematically erased by the very people who profited from your genius, all because they couldn't stand the sight of you in their exclusive club? If this fire in your gut feels familiar, if you've ever been made to feel small in a room you deserve to command, then hit that subscribe button right now. Like this video and drop a hell no in the comments because you are about to witness a masterclass in rewriting the goddamn script. The viewer count on the live feed ticked upward relentlessly. 1-212-215, 1-222-237, 1-259. In the corner, Sterling's executive assistant, a young woman named Chloe, feigned adjusting her laptop camera, ensuring the internal Slack broadcast captured every devastating detail. The chat window was exploding with a chaotic mix of shock, racist memes, and a few brave, anonymous messages of support. You have exactly 20 minutes before this building locks down for the weekend, Sterling announced, making a grand show of checking his Patek Philippe. It was the same watch he'd worn to the charity gala. The one he boasted was a cool $250,000, a family heirloom passed down through generations of good breeding. Evelyn's fingers, steady and deliberate, traced the outline of her bespoke leather briefcase. Inside, nestled among her personal effects, was a legal folder crafted from reinforced titanium alloy. The embossed letters, J.B. and Associates, were almost invisible to the naked eye. But they were there, a quiet promise of the storm to come. "Franklin," she said, her voice betraying none of the seismic chaos churning within her. It was as calm and unyielding as a slab of granite. "Our Q4 returns outperformed every projection by 31%. I brought in the largest institutional client in this firm's history. So tell me, what is the real reason for this?" Board member Henry Vance leaned forward, his smile sharp enough to slice diamonds. "Evelyn, my dear, you must understand. Our clients, the real money in this city, they expect a certain familiarity when they entrust us with their fortunes. They want to see someone they can relate to across the table." The words were a physical blow, a calculated racial insult wrapped in the silken glove of corporate doublespeak. Around the table, smug, knowing glances were exchanged between the old guard members. Arthur Finch, the newest and youngest board member, the only one who had ever shown her a shred of professional respect, shifted in his chair, his discomfort a palpable presence in the room. Sterling's phone vibrated against the polished table. He glanced at the message and let out a short, barking laugh. "The press release is already written. Mutual departure to pursue new ventures. We're keeping it very amicable. Nothing personal, of course," Vance added, adjusting his silk tie. "It's just that certain aggressive leadership styles don't quite mesh with the traditions of old money." With a serenity that seemed to infuriate them even more, Evelyn retrieved her phone from her pocket. Her thumb moved with purpose, hovering over a contact saved simply as JB. She typed a single cryptic message. "Red Tango. Execute. Now." The message was sent. Miles away, in a sprawling corner office suite with a commanding view of the federal courthouse, a bank of phones began to buzz. "You people!" Sterling spat, the mask of civility finally shattering completely. "Always have to make everything about race. Sometimes you're just not the right fit. Period." The Slack viewer count surged past 2,500. Screenshots of Sterling's comment flooded Twitter and anonymous finance forums within seconds. Someone, somewhere, started a hashtag. Justice for Evelyn Reed. Mariah Flores, a junior analyst from the Bronx who was burning the midnight oil on the 34th floor, now stood pressed against the glass wall of the corridor, her phone held high. Her impromptu Instagram live broadcast was rapidly gaining traction, spreading like wildfire through her network of friends from NYU, CUNY, and Columbia. The viewer count on her personal stream was exploding. 4,000, 6,500, 9,000. "Ma'am, I have to ask you to leave," said Charles, the head of building security. But his voice lacked conviction. Charles had been with the firm for 2 decades. He remembered when Evelyn first started. He remembered how she made a point to learn the names of every single person on the security and maintenance staff. How she had personally recommended his son for a prestigious scholarship. He hesitated. Suddenly, the building's public address system, usually reserved for fire drills, crackled to life. "Attention all Sterling and Vance employees. Please remain at your desks. A mandatory all-hands announcement is imminent. I repeat, do not exit the building." Evelyn didn't so much as blink. She glanced at her phone. 5:16 p.m. "This is not a negotiation." Sterling's voice escalated into a near shout. "You are terminated. Fired. Effective immediately. Security, do your damn job." 2 more guards, younger and more imposing than Charles, materialized at the doorway, flanking him. The atmosphere in the room turned frigid. 8 smug board members, 3 security guards, 1 terrified assistant still streaming, and Dr. Evelyn Reed, standing alone and defiant at the head of a table of wolves. Vance's voice turned sickly sweet. "We've already prepped the media outlets. A very clean, very professional transition. No one needs to get hurt in the crossfire." The threat was as heavy and suffocating as a shroud. Maria's live stream viewership rocketed past 15,000. The comment section was a torrent of righteous fury. "This is a blatant Title VII violation. Somebody call the Southern District of New York. I'm pulling my portfolio Monday morning. Who the hell is this company?" Someone had already identified Sterling and Vance Financial. The firm's main switchboard began to light up. line after line blinking red in a desperate SOS. 14 minutes, Sterling snarled, tapping his watch with a trembling finger. Then security physically removes you. Your choice. Evelyn's hand rested protectively on her briefcase. The cool, unyielding surface of the titanium legal folder beneath the supple leather was a secret source of strength. Inside that folder lay 6 months of meticulous, painstaking documentation. Covert audio recordings, mirrored email servers, full transcripts of every coded, discriminatory conversation. Everything was 100% legal and 100% ruinous. But she didn't open it. Not yet. Instead, she locked eyes with each board member, one by one. Finch couldn't meet her gaze. He knew, in his gut, how profoundly wrong this was. Vance's smug smile began to waver under her unwavering obsidian stare. Even Sterling's brutish confidence seemed to flicker for a fraction of a second. Do you know what's so fascinating about the world of high finance? Evelyn's voice sliced through the tension like a surgeon's scalpel. It's built entirely on a single, fragile commodity: trust, reputation, the absolute belief that the people managing your fortune will always, always do the right thing. She paused, her eyes darting to the ever-climbing viewer count on Chloe's laptop screen. 22,000, and accelerating. What happens when that belief is shattered? Charles shifted his considerable weight from one foot to the other. The two younger guards were whispering to each other, their faces pale. They'd all seen the comments, the raw, unfiltered fury flooding the live feeds. Their own wives, sisters, and cousins were probably watching this very moment. Sterling's phone buzzed again, this time with a frantic, angry text. He frowned. Another buzz, another text, each one chipping away at his composure. The firm's main client relations line was lighting up like the Rockefeller Center Christmas tree. 5:23 p.m., the automated system announced coolly. 7 minutes until security lockdown. But the entire universe had shifted. The balance of power in the room was undergoing a seismic, tectonic realignment. Slow, invisible, but utterly cataclysmic. Evelyn checked her own phone. A single new text from JB. The cavalry is in the lobby. ETA 90 seconds. She placed her phone on the table and allowed herself a small, cold smile for the first time since this ordeal began. It was not a smile of happiness. It was the smile of a grandmaster who had been patiently playing chess while her opponents were still trying to figure out the rules of checkers. Franklin, she said softly, her voice now laced with ice. You might want to hold that press release. Sterling's laugh was a harsh, brittle thing. Hold it? You're delusional if you think... His phone rang, a shrill, insistent shriek. The caller ID flashed. Channel 4 News. He stabbed the decline button, but it immediately rang again. A different number. Then another. Sir? Chloe's voice was a terrified whisper. She was staring, wide-eyed, at her monitor. The live stream, it's been mirrored to YouTube. We have 68,000 live viewers in the last 3 minutes. The blood drained from Henry Vance's face. His own phone began to vibrate violently on the table, a frantic dance of incoming texts. Messages poured in from his golf buddies, his wife, his son away at Cornell. They were all asking the same horrifying question. What the hell is happening at your firm? Charles cleared his throat, his voice now firm and steady. Mr. Sterling, perhaps we should de-escalate this situation. You will do your job and you will get her out of this room, Sterling shrieked, his face a mottled, apoplectic purple. Now. But Charles stood his ground, a human wall of defiance. The two younger guards exchanged a look. One of them, a young man named Officer Miller, was receiving a flood of texts from his sister, a law student at NYU, complete with screenshots and legal citations. 5:25 p.m. 5 minutes to lockdown. Mariah's Instagram stream surpassed 40,000 viewers. She had found her voice now, narrating in a low, steady whisper. You are all watching this live from Sterling and Vance Financial in New York City. They are illegally terminating their black female CIO, a woman who increased their profits by 31% for no stated reason. This is what systemic discrimination looks like in 2025. The comment section became a tactical war room. Call the SEC. Get the New York Attorney General's office on the line. Somebody get this footage to the New York Times. This isn't just immoral, it's a massive breach of fiduciary duty to their shareholders. Arthur Finch finally spoke, his voice trembling but clear. Franklin, for the love of God, table this discussion. The reputational damage. Reputational damage? Vance screeched, his voice cracking like a terrified adolescent's. Robert, she's the one who created this media circus. If she would just pack her box and leave with a shred of dignity, like a good little... He caught himself, but the word hung in the air, unspoken but understood by everyone watching. Girl. Evelyn's words were pure, unadulterated steel. Is that what you were expecting? The quiet, dignified exit? The room fell into a stunned silence, broken only by the relentless symphony of buzzing phones. Every single person's device was now alight, a digital storm of inquiry and outrage. Chloe, the assistant, who Evelyn now remembered was a recent finance graduate from Fordham, looked like she was about to be physically sick. The accidental Slack stream she initiated had been screen-recorded and was now going viral on TikTok, spawning dozens of remixes and duets under hashtags like Chatstreet Sterling and Vance So White, Banking While Black, and Evelyn Reads the Receipts. This is precisely what happens, Vance hissed, his face contorted in a mask of pure hatred. When you people forget your goddamn place. The words landed with the force of a nuclear detonation. Even Sterling flinched. Finch buried his face in his hands. Charles's jaw was set so tight a muscle jumped in his cheek. And Mariah's live stream captured it all, every toxic syllable, in pristine, high-definition audio. 5:27 p.m., 3 minutes to lockdown. Evelyn's phone buzzed, a text from JB. Ground floor secured. We are ascending. Ready on your command. She showed no reaction, no smile, no glance, nothing. But her entire posture shifted. Her spine straightened, her chin lifted. It was the bearing of a queen who was about to move her most powerful piece onto the board. The fascinating thing about social media, she said, her tone conversational, as if discussing the weather, is that once the truth goes viral, you can't stuff it back in the bottle. You can't spin it. You can't delete it. Sterling's phone showed 32 missed calls. Channel 4, The Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg News, Reuters, even a senior producer from CNN's business desk. The main switchboard has crashed, Chloe reported, her voice hollow with shock. Our IT department says we're under a denial of service attack. And customer relations. They're getting thousands of calls. People are screaming. They're asking how to liquidate their accounts. For the very first time, raw, primal fear flashed across Franklin Sterling's face. Sterling and Vance managed over $50 billion in assets for New York's elite. If even 2% of their clients pulled their money. This is blackmail, he snarled, a cornered animal spitting defiance. You planned this whole elaborate fucking show. I planned nothing, Evelyn replied, her voice a chilling calm amidst the storm. I am simply a woman sitting in a boardroom, being subjected to illegal, discriminatory termination while the entire world watches. Their reaction? That's entirely on you. Maria skillfully angled her phone, capturing Sterling's purple-faced rage, Vance's sweat-soaked panic, and the security guard's profound, uncomfortable stillness. Her follower count had quadrupled in the last 5 minutes. Activist groups, legal aid societies, and prominent civil rights attorneys were now sharing the stream. A single comment caught fire. If they treat their star CIO like this, imagine how they treat the little guy. Liquidate Sterling and Vance. Within minutes, it had been retweeted over 50,000 times. 5:29 p.m., 1 minute to lockdown. The phone on the boardroom's credenza rang, a piercing, unfamiliar sound. It was a direct line, rarely used. After 4 rings, Chloe answered, her hand trembling. Sterling and Vance Executive Office. Yes. 1 moment, please. She covered the mouthpiece, her eyes wide with terror. It's the Enforcement Division of the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. The room went utterly, deathly silent. Evelyn picked up her own phone. Another text from the JB. All 12 of us have arrived. We are outside your door. Phase 2 is a go. She placed the phone face down and looked directly at Sterling, her eyes devoid of any emotion save a cold, righteous certainty. Franklin, I tried to do this the easy way, she said, her voice now resonating with the full weight of her authority. A private conversation, a quiet, professional negotiation. But you chose to make it public. You chose to make it ugly. She paused, every person in the room hanging on her next words. So now, it gets federal. The elevator chimed softly 12 floors below, its ascent a quiet harbinger of the impending legal annihilation. The conference room doors swung open not with a bang, but with a quiet, terrifying swoosh of compressed air. 12 figures, men and women of varying ages and ethnicities, all clad in immaculate, dark power suits, filed into the room with the synchronized precision of a Tier 1 special operations team. Leading the charge was Jasmine Burke, the JB from Evelyn's phone, a senior partner at JB & Associates and a legendary litigator whose courtroom reputation was so fearsome, corporate lawyers whispered her name like a goddamn ghost story. Her very presence sucked the arrogance out of the room, leaving a vacuum of pure, unadulterated dread. The board members who, mere moments before, had been apex predators, now seemed to shrink into their ridiculously expensive chairs. Good evening, gentlemen of the board. Jasmine's voice wasn't loud, but it had the density of a black hole, drawing all light and sound into it. My name is Attorney Jasmine Burke. I, along with my colleagues, represent Dr. Evelyn Reed in a multi-count federal discrimination, retaliation, and securities fraud lawsuit filed against this institution and each of you, individually. Sterling's face contorted into a grotesque mask of confusion, rage, and a slow-dawning catastrophic horror. Federal lawsuit? This is a private human resources matter. Not anymore. Evelyn opened her briefcase with the calm deliberation of a bomb disposal expert. The titanium folder emerged, gleaming under the recessed lighting like the Dead Sea Scrolls of corporate malfeasance. Franklin, gentlemen, meet United States District Court, Southern District of New York, case number 25, CV 7784. It was filed under seal 3 months ago. The atmosphere in the room didn't just shift, it imploded. A junior associate, a young man radiating an almost palpable aura of Ivy League competence, began distributing bound legal documents around the table. Each board member received an identical, disturbingly thick packet. 217 pages of meticulously documented, irrefutable evidence. What you are now holding, Jasmine continued, her voice never rising but somehow filling every cubic inch of space, details a systematic 18-month campaign of racial and gender-based discrimination against Dr. Reed, in direct and flagrant violation of Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, the New York State Human Rights Law, and the Equal Pay Act. We're also alleging multiple violations of SEC Rule 10b-5 concerning fraudulent misrepresentations to shareholders regarding your firm's diversity and inclusion policies. Henry Vance's hands were shaking so violently he could barely hold the document. His face had turned the color of old parchment. "This is bullshit. You can't record us. We didn't give our consent." A second attorney, a sharp, older woman with piercing blue eyes, stepped forward. "New York is a one-party consent state, Mr. Vance," she stated, the legal code section falling from her lips like scripture. Under New York Penal Law Section 250.05, Dr. Reed was perfectly within her legal rights to document any conversation she was a party to. Every recording is legally admissible. "We have," Evelyn stated, her voice as steady and cold as a morgue slab, "over 80 hours of audio recordings from board meetings, informal discussions, and one-on-one performance reviews. Each one transcribed, time-stamped, and cross-referenced with your own internal emails." She slid a single transcript across the table to Sterling. His own words stared up at him in cold, black type, a death sentence on paper. "January 14th, 2025, 2:15 p.m. We need to manage her optics. She's too aggressive for our client base. March 2nd, 2025, 10:30 a.m. I don't care if her numbers are good. She doesn't have the right pedigree. She's not one of us. April 21st, 2025, 4:45 p.m. Just find a reason. Any reason. I want her gone by the end of the quarter. Every racist dog whistle, every coded insult, every casual dismissal, all captured, cataloged, and ready for a federal jury. 5:31 p.m. The building should have been in lockdown, but the security guards hadn't moved an inch. The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission has been conducting a parallel investigation for the past 60 days, Jasmine announced, letting the full, crushing weight of federal government oversight settle into the room. Dr. Reed has been cooperating with them as a protected whistleblower under the Dodd-Frank Act. Any action taken against her, including today's theatrical performance, constitutes illegal retaliation. A third attorney, a young, impeccably dressed black man whose academic credentials practically shimmered around him, stepped forward. Furthermore, we have acquired sworn, notarized affidavits from 27 current and former employees, detailing a pervasive and hostile work environment. The pattern of discrimination extends far beyond Dr. Reed. He produced a second, even thicker folder. The affidavits were a roll call of the firm's sins. Maria Flores's name was at the top, a 5-page, devastatingly detailed account of the microaggressions and racial bias she'd witnessed. Charles, the head of security, had provided a statement. Even Chloe, the terrified assistant still broadcasting this corporate implosion, had met with Evelyn's legal team 2 weeks ago, providing testimony about the openly hostile and discriminatory environment she'd been forced to endure. This is impossible," Sterling stammered, his bravado utterly stripped away, leaving only a pathetic, desperate shell of a man. "You couldn't have built a federal case of this magnitude in secret." "Try 6 months of meticulous preparation." Evelyn's smile was arctic. "The day you vetoed my appointment to the Acquisitions Committee, claiming I needed to be more of a team player, was the day I made my first call to Jasmine. The viewer count on the combined live streams now exceeded 250,000. Maria had switched her feed to a split screen, showing the boardroom drama alongside the exploding social media reaction. The comments were a cascade of vindication. "She had receipts!" "A 6-month-long con. This is magnificent. Never ever underestimate a black woman with a law firm on speed dial. They aren't just getting fired, they're going to jail." Jasmine held up a thick, blue-bound legal brief, the type reserved for major federal litigation. Sterling and Vance, and each of you as individual board members, now face 11 distinct federal and state charges. These include, but are not limited to, racial discrimination, gender discrimination, illegal whistleblower retaliation, securities fraud, and conspiracy to violate civil rights. The charge of conspiracy, she added, her eyes locking on to Sterling, carries with it mandatory minimum criminal penalties, including a potential 10-year prison sentence. The air in the room became thin, unbreathable. Prison. Not just fines, not just professional ruin. Cold, hard, federal prison time. The New York Attorney General's office has been briefed, the older female attorney added, her tone clinical. As has the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency. They are currently reviewing your federal banking charter for immediate suspension pending the outcome of this litigation. Charter suspension, the corporate equivalent of a public execution. The firm would cease to exist. Every asset frozen, every account in chaos. Arthur Finch, who had been silent for what felt like an eternity, finally found his voice, a strangled, panicked whisper. How much do you want? Name a number. Evelyn's response was immediate and unequivocal. This was never about money. This is about justice. It's about accountability. And it's about tearing down the rotten, corrupt system that allows men like you to believe you are above the law. 5:34. 4 p.m. Jasmine slid another document across the table. This one was embossed with the seal of the U.S. District Court. Pursuant to our preliminary injunction filing, you have exactly 48 hours to choose between one of two options. She held up a single, perfectly manicured finger. Option 1, full and unconditional capitulation. Dr. Reed is immediately reinstated as CEO, not CIO, with a newly negotiated 5-year ironclad contract, a $50 million settlement to be paid not to Dr. Reed, but directly into a fund supporting financial literacy and business grants for minority women in New York City. The immediate resignation of this entire board of directors. A complete independent overhaul of your hiring and promotion practices, overseen by a federal monitor for the next decade, and a full-page public apology to Dr. Reed, printed in the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, and the Financial Times. The demands were so audacious, so total, that for a moment the room was plunged into absolute disbelieving silence. Sterling's fists were clenched so tight his knuckles were white. And option 2? Jasmine's smile was the most terrifying thing any of them had ever seen. Professional, precise, and utterly lethal. Option 2. We proceed to trial. We will engage in full discovery, subpoenaing every email, text message, and private communication you have ever sent. We will depose every one of you under oath for days, your families, your business partners. We will make your personal and professional lives a transparent, open book for the world to read. We will not only dismantle this firm, but we will pursue every single one of you, individually, to the full extent of civil and criminal law. We will seize your personal assets. We will destroy your reputations. And we will not stop until every last one of you has been held personally and publicly accountable for... Her voice dropped to a near whisper, a promise of devastation. And for the record, Dr. Reed has already been contacted by over 100 current and former employees who are prepared to join a class action lawsuit for creating a hostile work environment. That will be a separate and significantly more expensive conversation. Silence. The only sound was the distant wail of sirens growing closer on the streets of Manhattan, a fitting soundtrack for the complete and utter implosion of their world. An attorney Evelyn hadn't even noticed before, a silver-haired gentleman with the quiet gravitas of a Supreme Court justice, opened his own briefcase. We have also, in the course of our discovery, uncovered significant irregularities in your firm's trading practices. It appears there may be a pattern of insider trading related to several major acquisitions over the past 2 years. The Department of Justice Criminal Division is very, very interested in your communications logs. He slid a final damning chart across the table, a complex web of dates, trades, and suspiciously timed profits. That, he added casually, delivering the final fatal blow, is an entirely separate federal investigation, already in progress. 5:37 p.m. Sterling's phone vibrated violently, skittering across the table. He stared at the screen, his face turning a ghastly shade of gray. That's the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York. Answer it, Franklin, Evelyn suggested, her voice radiating a power that was now absolute. They're likely calling to schedule your preliminary deposition for next Monday morning. His hand, shaking uncontrollably, fumbled for the phone. He declined the call, but it rang again, instantly. A different number, then another. The full, terrifying apparatus of the United States federal government was now mobilizing against them. The story just broke on Bloomberg, the young black attorney announced, looking up from his phone with a deep sense of professional satisfaction. Sterling and Vance facing massive federal discrimination and fraud lawsuit, board members face criminal charges. The financial world moves at the speed of light. Their parent company's stock was already in freefall in after-hours trading. Maria's livestream was now a global phenomenon. Comments poured in, a torrent of righteous victory. This is a goddamn legal thriller. Black women don't just break glass ceilings, they bring the whole damn building down on their enemies. Federal, prison, time. This is how you burn the old boys' club to the ground. The viewer count had surpassed 500,000 and was climbing exponentially. Vance's voice was a choked, desperate whisper. What happens if we take option 1? Jasmine's smile was all business now, cold, sharp, and final. Doctor, Reed returns to work on Monday as the new chief executive officer. You all tender your resignations, effective immediately. The federal lawsuit is settled under the terms we have laid out, and the criminal referrals from our firm are paused, pending your full and continued cooperation. She pauses, savoring the utter, complete reversal of fortune. And you, Mr. Sterling, and you, Mr. Vance, will personally undergo 36 months of court-supervised racial and gender sensitivity counseling, at your own expense. The humiliation was exquisitely crafted, a punishment far worse than mere financial ruin, a public admission of their guilt, a court-mandated re-education, personal, public, and permanent accountability. And if we choose trial? Sterling asked, his voice a ghost of its former self, already knowing the answer that would unmake his entire existence. Criminal indictments will be unsealed by the Department of Justice within 72 hours. Your personal assets will be frozen. You will be arrested. And Dr. Reed will be appointed interim CEO by the federal court anyway, under the provisions of the Sarbanes-Oxley Whistleblower Protection Act. 5:40 p.m. Evelyn stood up for the first time since this ordeal began. She rose not with anger, but with the profound, quiet dignity of a woman who had weathered a hurricane and emerged not just unscathed, but in command of the storm itself. I gave you every opportunity to do this with a shred of decency, she said, her voice soft but resonating with the power of federal law and unshakable justice. To acknowledge my value, to respect my contributions. Instead, you chose public humiliation. You chose to make this a spectacle of your own bigotry. So I responded in kind. She gestured to her legal team. her own personal army of justice. I made it about the law, federal law, the kind with steel teeth, long-lasting precedent, and the kind of consequences that don't just change careers, but transform entire institutions. The livestream now had over 700,000 viewers. Court federal justice was trending #1 in the United States, right alongside Hulasser's Black Excellence and Horace Evelyn Reed, CEO. "Your 48 hours start now," Jasmine announced, her words carrying the finality of a judge's gavel. "Choose wisely. The United States government is waiting for your answer." The legal team filed out of the room as seamlessly as they had entered, leaving behind the shattered husks of a dozen powerful men, a mountain of irrefutable evidence, and the smoldering ruins of a discriminatory empire. Evelyn remained standing, her briefcase now held loosely in one hand, looking down at the men who had tried to cast her into the abyss, only to find themselves dragged down into it. "And Franklin," she said, her voice barely a whisper, delivering the final coup de grace with surgical precision. "Cancel the fucking press release." Saturday morning, 9:15 a.m. The executive boardroom at Sterling and Vance Financial had been transformed from a seat of power into the scene of a corporate autopsy. The gleaming mahogany table now felt like a mortuary slab. Franklin Sterling sat at its head, a ghost in a bespoke suit. The man's swagger had been replaced by a crushing weight of fear. He looked like he'd aged 20 years overnight. His eyes were bloodshot, his hands trembled, and the aura of command he once wore like a tailored coat had been shredded. "The U.S. Attorney's Office called my personal cell phone 6 times last night," he announced to the emergency board meeting, his voice a dry, rasping thing. "They're scheduling grand jury subpoenas. The SEC has frozen all executive bonuses pending their investigation. The OCC is sending in a team of auditors on Monday to tear this firm apart, piece by piece." Arthur Finch, looking pale and nauseous, was staring at a stack of legal notices that had been couriered to his home at dawn. "They want everything. 5 years of emails, server logs, personnel files, everything." Henry Vance looked even worse. His usual immaculate grooming had been replaced by a desperate, haunted look. His wife had left with the kids to go to her sister's. "My attorney," he said, the words catching in his throat, "says we're looking at personal criminal liability under the RICO Act, racketeering. He said they could argue that we operated the board as a criminal enterprise to defraud shareholders and violate civil rights." The video of Friday's event, now dubbed the Chaur Sterling Slaughter online, had been viewed over 5 million times. It was the lead story on every major news network. The New York Times business section had a headline that read, "The lawsuit that toppled an empire, how one woman's courage exposed Wall Street's rotten core." "Our stock dropped 32% in after-hours trading," another board member reported, his voice hollow. "The parent company is threatening to dissolve our charter and sue us personally for gross negligence and reputational damages." The financial contagion was spreading. The crisis at Sterling and Vance was now a threat to their entire parent holding company. Federal scrutiny on one subsidiary invited it on all of them. Sterling's phone buzzed. Caller ID, "The New York Post." He let it go to voicemail. It was his 27th media inquiry since sunrise. "What about our legal strategy?" Vance asked, his voice laced with a desperate hope. "Can't we fight this? Countersue for defamation or something?" Michael Chen, the firm's lead corporate counsel, or what was left of him after he'd been summarily fired and then rehired on a contract basis, shook his head grimly. "Fight what? They have 80 hours of audio recordings. They have 27 sworn affidavits. They have your own emails. They have a federal whistleblower. And they have Jasmine fucking Burke, who has a 98% success rate in federal court and has never, ever lost a civil rights case We don't have a legal strategy. We have a surrender. The only sound in the room was the quiet, steady ticking of Sterling's Patek Philippe, a mocking reminder of how quickly a lifetime of power could be annihilated. The Department of Justice's Criminal Division has already impaneled a grand jury, Chen continued, his voice flat and devoid of hope. They're investigating insider trading charges, on top of everything else. If they find a pattern of corrupt activity, you aren't just looking at financial ruin. You are looking at spending the rest of your lives in a federal correctional facility. Federal prison, not the country club minimum security camps, but hard, real time. The words hung in the air, a vision of orange jumpsuits and communal showers, the ultimate, unimaginable humiliation. Vance looked like he was about to vomit. What about option 1? Chen read directly from the settlement terms. Dr. Reed's immediate reinstatement as Chief Executive Officer, 5-year contract, final say on all board appointments, the $50 million fund for minority women, the public apology. And, he paused, your immediate and permanent resignations. The terms would not just change the firm, they would utterly remake it in Evelyn's image. Every policy, every hire, every decision would now be filtered through the lens of equity and justice she would impose. And the personal consequences? Sterling asked, his voice barely a whisper. The public apologies. The court-supervised sensitivity counseling for you and Mr. Vance. Full cooperation with all federal investigations in exchange for a recommendation of no jail time on the civil rights charges. The insider trading charges, however, are a separate matter. The U.S. Attorney makes no promises on those. The social death would be as total as the professional one. Sterling was the chairman of the Metropolitan Museum's board. He was on the board of the Philharmonic. He belonged to 3 of the most exclusive golf clubs in the country. It would all be gone, evaporated in a cloud of public shame. Finch was staring at his tablet, his face ashen. It's all over the news. Someone has leaked the entire settlement document. They're calling it the Evelyn Reed Mandate. Civil rights groups are hailing it as a landmark victory against systemic racism on Wall Street. The narrative was already set in stone. They weren't just incompetent. They were villains in a national morality play. There's more, Chen said, his face grim. Jasmine Burke just filed an emergency motion for asset seizure. If you do not accept option 1 by the 5 p.m. deadline on Monday, she is asking a federal judge to freeze every personal bank account, every investment portfolio, and every piece of real estate you own, pending the outcome of the trial. That was the final nail in the coffin. Financial ruin wasn't a possibility. It was now an imminent threat. Vance was the first to break. I can't have my family's assets seized. I won't go to prison because of Franklin's issues. My issues? Sterling exploded, his voice a raw shriek of impotent rage. You were the one who talked about cultural alignment. You backed my play at every turn. You were drooling at the thought of getting her out. The us against her camaraderie of the board had completely disintegrated, replaced by a desperate, frantic scramble for self-preservation. Finch stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. I am calling for an emergency vote. I vote to accept option 1 in its entirety. His hand shot up. 2 other board members immediately followed suit. All eyes turned to Sterling and Vance. Vance raised a trembling hand. I vote yes. Now it was just Sterling, the man who had set this catastrophe in motion, now utterly alone, facing the abyss he had created. His phone buzzed. A text message from his largest client, a multi-billion-dollar pension fund. We are liquidating our entire position, effective Monday morning. Our fiduciary duty prohibits us from being associated with this. Another $10 billion gone. The settlement requires a unanimous board vote. Chen stated quietly. The silence in the room stretched for an eternity. Sterling stared at the empty cardboard box still sitting on the credenza, a monument to his own hubris. He could hear the faint sounds of chanting from the street below. A protest had materialized, organized on social media overnight. Hundreds of people were marching in front of their building, carrying signs. Justice for Dr. Reed. Invest with integrity. End Wall Street racism. The optics were apocalyptic. A global financial firm besieged by the public for its own blatant, televised bigotry. Finally, in a voice so quiet it was barely audible, Sterling spoke. Yes, I vote yes. The vote was unanimous. Option 1 it was. I will contact JB and Associates immediately, Chen said, already dialing his phone. Dr. Reed will be at her new desk at 9 a.m. Monday morning. The press conference to announce your resignations is scheduled for noon. As the defeated board members shuffled out of the room, leaving their careers and reputations in smoking ruins, Sterling remained, a king in a shattered castle. On Monday morning, Dr. Evelyn Reed, the woman he tried to break, would walk back through those doors, not as his subordinate, but as his successor. She wasn't just taking his job. She was taking his entire world. The war wasn't just over. It was a complete and total rout. Justice, this time, had come with a vengeance. Monday morning, 8:58 a.m. When Dr. Evelyn Reed walked through the gleaming glass doors of Sterling and Vance Financial, the atmosphere was not just different. It was a new dimension of reality. Charles, the head of security, stood ramrod straight. Good morning, CEO Reed. Welcome. The title felt right, earned not just in profits, but in fire. Every employee in the soaring marble lobby stopped what they were doing. A ripple of spontaneous applause broke out, soft at first, then growing in confidence. Maria Flores stood by the elevator bank, her phone out, but not for a live stream. This was for the history books. How does it feel? She asked, a massive grin on her face. Like a new beginning, Evelyn replied, her smile genuine and warm. But a beginning built on the ashes of the old world. At high noon, the press conference was a global media event. The 7 resigning board members sat behind a hastily rebranded banner. Sterling Reed Financial, a new era of equity and integrity. Franklin Sterling, looking hollowed out and broken, stepped to the podium, his hands shaking as he read his prepared statement. On behalf of the former board of directors, I offer our most profound and sincere apology to Dr. Evelyn Reed for our discriminatory actions, which were a violation of her civil rights, our corporate ethics, and the fundamental tenets of human decency. Every word was a surrender, every sentence an admission of guilt, broadcast live to the entire world. 3 months later, the firm was unrecognizable. Evelyn had cleaned house. The new board was a masterclass in diversity and expertise. Marcus Thorne, a legendary black venture capitalist, was the new chairman. Dr. Anya Sharma, a renowned ethics professor from Wharton, oversaw a new, radically transparent compliance department. The culture had been transformed from the ground up. The firm's bottom line told the real story. Under Evelyn's leadership as CEO, and with a new focus on investing in underserved communities and minority-owned businesses, client deposits had grown by $15 billion. The very communities the old guard had dismissed as not our culture were now the driving force of the firm's explosive growth. Trust, once shattered, was being rebuilt on a foundation of tangible, demonstrable action. The $50 million settlement fund, managed by a non-profit Evelyn established, had already provided seed funding for 50 women of color-led startups. Maria Flores, now promoted to Vice President of Community Investment, ran the program. Dr. Reed didn't just win a lawsuit, she told a reporter from Forbes. She created a new economic ecosystem. The mandated bias training wasn't a one-off HR seminar. It was a deep, ongoing process of cultural re-education. Employee satisfaction was at an all-time high. The Old Boys Club was dead, replaced by a true meritocracy. 6 months after her triumphant return, Sterling Reed Financial received the highest possible rating from the Corporate Equality Index for the first time in its history. The federal monitors who had been assigned to oversee the transition found the firm was exceeding every single requirement of the settlement. "Compliance is the floor, not the ceiling," Evelyn stated in an interview with the Harvard Business Review. "We aren't just trying to avoid lawsuits. We are actively trying to model what a truly equitable and profitable financial institution looks like in the 21st century." The ripple effects were felt across the industry. Other Wall Street firms, terrified of facing their own Evelyn Reed moment, began preemptively overhauling their diversity and inclusion policies. The case had set a new, terrifying precedent for the establishment. The cardboard box from that infamous Friday now sat on a shelf in Evelyn's expansive CEO office. But inside, where her achievements had once lain discarded, a vibrant orchid was now in full, glorious bloom. A symbol of resilience, of beauty emerging from a place of ugliness. Dr. Evelyn Reed hadn't just gotten her job back. She had started a revolution. And that revolution was just beginning. 1 year later, Dr. Evelyn Reed stood on the main stage at the World Economic Forum in Davos. Her keynote address, titled "The Revolution Will Be Capitalized: How Moral Leadership Drives Profit," received a thunderous standing ovation from the world's most powerful leaders. She didn't fight for a job, she had told them. She fought for an idea. The idea that the rooms where power resides should reflect the world they serve. The Sterling Reed model, once a radical experiment, was now being taught as a case study in business schools around the globe. Minority business loans at the firm were up 500%. Home ownership in the communities they served had doubled. Their portfolio of investments in green technology and sustainable infrastructure was the largest on Wall Street. Profit and purpose were no longer mutually exclusive. These were more than just numbers. They were the stories of lives changed. The story of a young woman from Queens who got the funding to launch a revolutionary biotech company. The story of a family in the South Bronx that bought their first home. The story of an entire community being revitalized because a bank finally decided to invest in its people. These were the true returns on her investment. Franklin Sterling and Henry Vance completed their court-supervised counseling. Sterling moved to a quiet, anonymous town in the Midwest. His final report, now a public court document, contained a handwritten note. "I learned too late that a man's legacy is not the money he makes, but the good he does. I did very little good. It was a quiet, pathetic end to a loud, destructive life." This story was never about his redemption. It was about Evelyn's resilience. It was about the courage to fight back, not with rage, but with a strategy so brilliant, so meticulous, that it turned the system's own weapons against it. As she concluded her speech in Davos, her final words echoed in the massive hall. "The most powerful revolutions are not always the loudest. Sometimes they begin with a single person who refuses to accept that this is just the way things are." That's the real story I want to share today. Did this story move you? Did it fire you up? The fight for justice happens in boardrooms and courtrooms every single day. If you believe these stories of intelligence, strategy, and resilience need to be told, then subscribe to this channel right now. Turn on your notifications. We are building a community dedicated to celebrating the quiet warriors and strategic champions who are rewriting the rules. Share your own story of workplace injustice in the comments below. Let us know what part of Evelyn's victory resonated most with you. Your voice, your story, adds to the chorus demanding change. Share this video. Like this video. Subscribe. Because every time we amplify these stories, we inspire the next Evelyn Reed to stand up, to prepare, and to win. And we remind the world that justice isn't just a dream. It's a strategy. And when fought with brilliance and courage, it is absolutely, positively inevitable.